This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production.
Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed, everyone. We are so excited for what we have in store for you today and us, because selfishly, she's here for us. We are talking about something that everyone could use more of. And we have the perfect guest to share with us today exactly how to get it. We are talking about cultivating radical joy with Joy Strategist and host of Journey to Purpose podcast, Erica Lasan. Thank you for being here and welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me, ladies. I am so excited to be here. You don't even know. My cheeks already hurt.
Yes, and it could be better timing. Brooke and I really believe in timing and the reason why we meet people when we meet them. Like, we have been looking for you and waiting for you, and it's like you fell right in our lap at the perfect time. And even like today, Brooke and I are both kind of struggling with mental health today, just feeling like we're not doing enough and we're off. And it's like literally a joy strategist. And you, of all people, Erica, we've been following you and we feel like we could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. So we are so excited to just jump in and talk to you. First of all, about your mission, because it's so incredible. Your mission is helping you find freedom in your purpose so you can live out your wildest dreams and change the world through radical joy. So let's talk about that and how this all started.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm like, okay, so you said we could like talk for hours, and I'm not going to talk for hours, but literally this is like something that has been such a process and a journey in and of itself. And I just really feel like it's one of those like kind of pinch me moments that I even get to have these kind of conversations, because at one point it just felt so far off, like graduating from college during the recession in '09, not having a job, feeling like so like undervalued and unsatisfied and unfulfilled where I was in life. And at the same time, also feeling like I was so full of promise, but nobody was seeing it, because graduating at that time, I had applied to like hundreds of jobs, like hundreds, and nobody was calling me back. And at one point I fell into a mild depression. And it's weird because at the time, I don't think that I really would have noticed that that was what it was, or I would have even qualified it as that, right? But I was literally crying every day at multiple points throughout the day. I would cry at my desk, at the place where I was working, which wasn't like my dream job. It was the same place that I'd been working since college as a internship. And then I would like take bathroom breaks and sit on the toilet for 20 minutes, like trying to like muffle my cries from the bathroom stall. And then like I'd go back to my desk and think about the fact that I'd just been crying and it'd make me want to cry all over again. I was just like very unfulfilled and just unsatisfied. And I would call my boyfriend then. He's my husband now. And this is literally one of the reasons why it made me feel like, oh, he's a good one. But one of the times when I would call him, because I would call him every day on my lunch break, just like crying, he asked me, and it was like a mind-blowing, like life-changing question. It started off with something so simple, but he was like, well, what do you want? And I was like, wow, no one's ever asked me what I want. And also I've never really asked myself what I want, right? So that question kind of put me in this mind space of, if I could live life without limits, like what would it look like? And then from there, I really began this adventure. And it's what I now call a joy quest, right? In part of my business and my program. But I went on this joy quest process of really rediscovering myself and reacquainting myself with my identity through joy, really anchoring my identity through joy. And it changed my life. It took me from a job where I felt uninspired and unfulfilled to literally hosting red carpets at like Fashion Week and doing on-air interviews with celebrities and like creating content for media partners that at one point just felt like a dream, And it really started with first prioritizing and really committing myself to the process of leaning into joy first, and then really anchoring myself in faith that like the rest would figure itself out. So it's been a really wild ride. And now I get to live, the life of my dreams, praise God.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you think you have to find your purpose and then create the successful career and then the joy will come later. You got to grind and bust your butt and work hard and all grit and no fun, and then the joy will come. And you're kind of saying flip that. So how does that work? How do you kind of start this and how does it work to start with joy?
And not be like, once this happens, then I'll be happy. Then I'll have joy. Once I get the house, once I get the career. I think like that's kind of what I'm hearing Andrea say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so real. I hear that from my clients and people all the time. Like, I need this in order to this. But honestly, when you think about it, if you're not satisfied now with where you are and what you have, then like it's very unlikely that you'll be satisfied once you reach that next level of success, because once you arrive there, there'll be another level that you want to like get to, you know? So the joy in the journey, and part of what the practice really is being present in where you are and being like, having gratitude where you are and understanding that literally everything that you need, you have in this given moment. And also understanding that as you begin to really like suck up all the juicy bits of the current moment, that is actually what helps you get clarity in where it is that you want to go next. And also really taking moments to be still enough to consider whether or not the things that you're actually looking to achieve are aligned with your joy, yes, but also your purpose. And when we think of purpose, a lot of times I think people think of these really big and grandiose things that we should be doing that look like the success that everyone in the world would have you think is what you should be doing. But our purpose isn't something that needs to be like found. It's what we're born with. It's what God has naturally given us. And it's usually tied to your natural and innate gifts and talents that God has given you. So it's not so much a need to find your purpose, but really a need to commit to doing the thing that God put you here to do. And given the society and the world that we live in, it's most of the time what it takes to do that isn't doing more, but doing less and getting still enough to like hear God's voice. And then through that, really allowing him to move you by faith and then being obedient to the steps that he's given you so that you can like enjoy the process, because that's where the joy comes in. Because it's not by our might or our strength. Like he works in us and through us to allow us to do all the things.
Yeah, I think about being so stressed of like trying to figure it all out and make time for all these things. Like you have a full-time job, then you have this side hustle that you're working so hard on to become the full-time job. And, you know, if you're like Andrea, then you're prioritizing being a mama and a social life. And it's so much that you get wrapped up in that stress. And it's almost like what you're saying, and a lot of the people in the personal development space that we follow. So you have to carve out that time to be still, to even hear what it is you want, and to know what that next step even is. So I'm curious, in a world like today where we are nonstop, go, 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 trying to make it all work, like what do you recommend for your clients to even start creating that space? What does that look like?
Okay. It maybe sound like a little bit of a shameless plug, but first and foremost, I'm not even gonna do that. What I would say really and truly is to like get still and pray. Real talk, like pray. And like, don't pray for like the material things, because at one point in my journey, I remember like, oh Lord, if I just had a little more money, I could do this. Oh Lord, if I like, give me the finances so I could do this. Give me. But at one point, I feel like I started to gain enough self-awareness where I began to consider, well, if God gave you that right now, what would you even do with it? Like, honestly, like, would you be ready for it? And so at some point I began to change my prayers to, Lord, give me understanding. Like, what is it that I need to know in this moment to prepare me for where it is that you should have me go, so that once the opportunity like arrives, I'm ready to actually serve, you know, and not doing so in a way where I'm like scatterbrained and all over the place, you know, like really being like effective and efficient, and doing so in a way where, you know, you're not shooting to the mountain of success, and then you don't even have the systems or the strategy in place to sustain it. Because nobody wants to be a one-hit wonder, at least I don't, And so once I really started to get clear around, Lord, all right, it's not just that I want money, because like money can come and go. You could literally win the lottery overnight and then you have all this money, but you could not be a good steward of the resources and you could put them to waste. So just understanding the need to really surrender to something bigger than yourself. And then through that surrender, giving yourself the permission to rest, and then really be like fueled by faith and fueled by God doing the things, right? And I know that probably sounds like really woo-woo and intangible, but that's really where things began to change for me. And it started kind of with a breakdown. I had a breakdown in church. But for those who may not necessarily be believers right now, or if you're looking for something super tangible to do, the Lord has given me a process that it worked for me. It's something that I put into play, and it's the first step of the journey to purpose process, which is to rediscover joy. And so I have a program that I created, and it is called the Joy Quest. And it really kind of puts in a bite-sized package the process of self-reflection for rediscovery. Also writing down the vision and making it very clear, while also holding space for you to be immersed in the vision enough to tap into the feeling of what's needed in order to begin to create actionable steps with clarity of what joy looks like for you, and then how you can begin to actualize that, like starting immediately, so you can create a plan.
Wow. We've kind of done work like this. We've hired a neurolinguistic programmer before, where it's like you, in your visualization, like put your hands into the hands of the person that you're going to be eventually, that's doing the thing that you want to do. Like you're visualizing it so hard and embodying that. And it's really important, because I like what you said, like tangible, where how can I truly sit down and take this time, envision what I actually want. How do I want to feel in that? What's required of me? And the lottery is such a good example, because people blow that money all the time because they don't have the systems in place. And this is kind of what's happening, how I can bring it back to myself right now, where I'm a pretty organized person, but our business is starting to blow up and it's getting really busy really fast. And I know I need some better systems in place to manage it, because my head's spinning, and it's great and it's wonderful. But you also need that vision of, okay, social media can take it this way, but where do I want it to go? What do I want that to look like for me? What does success look like for Brooke and me? And how can we create that together? And so I love this idea. You think you got to get faster to keep up, but in reality, you need to slow it down and peel it back. And so it's beautiful. I need to do this.
You're also not, for us right now, things are so busy that we're not taking the time to have the joy in it. I mean, we are, but I think that's a fear of ours, is if we want to keep going with this, how do we slow it down so that we can enjoy where we're at? And joy does look different for both of us, and it is different for everyone. So Erica, I'm curious, when you walk clients through this quest, like how do you find what joy looks like for you? Like, are there certain questions or reflections that you have people do to really get specific on what is it you're looking for? What does joy look like for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Because it does look different for everyone. And I think that that's one of the common misconceptions around the work that I do. Like, and some people, when I mention joy, it's like, oh, well, I don't need that. And it's like, but everyone needs joy, one. But two, it's like, well, I don't want this and I don't need that. And I was like, well, I never said that that's what joy looked like for you. Like, really, we should start with, what does joy look like for you? What does it mean? What does it feel like? What does it entail? Who is involved in the picture? So there are a series of questions. And because I don't like to be put in a box, because I believe that as children of God, we are not meant to be put in boxes. Like, we serve a God that's so full of possibilities that we could really do anything and everything through his power and his might, right? So I like to think of my business as a pick your own adventure. So depending on how somebody comes into the journey experience, if I have some space on my roster, like for coaching or consulting, then I will ask them a series of questions. But then sometimes if there isn't any room, then they could be added to a wait list, or they could go on the Joy Quest. And it's through that process that people not only get to understand what joy means for them, but also really making sure that they are considering what joy means for them in this particular season. Because joy for me in my 30s does not look like what it looked like in my 20s. Okay. I'm a completely different person. Each day we are growing and glowing. So it's really also understanding that there needs to be a process of constant like self-evaluation and checking in with yourself to see how you're feeling, where you're going, what you're doing. And that's part of what the Joy Quest allows you to do. And the work in general, right? Because it's really about knowing yourself and rediscovering, recommitting, and reconnecting to your purpose and identity and joy on a constant basis.
I love that too, because it takes the ownership away from anybody but yourself, right? Like you can think it's your circumstances, your job, your spouse, your finances, you know, whatever's happened to you in your life. But this is like, no, let's slow down and really reflect just you, just in your own thoughts and feelings, what you want and what you're pursuing, you know, and then moving from there to cultivating that joy of what that's going to look like.
Yeah. I love that you even like mention it, like people thinking that it's the situation and circumstances that's actually robbing them from the joy. Because even in my personal experience, when I took the time to really evaluate what was making me so like resentful or angry or like just like not peace filled in past parts of my life, because the graduation part and finding like establishing my career was one part of the journey, but then I had a like disrupted my journey when I found out that I was going to be a mom, and I was not prepared or ready for that. And that took me down the whole like lane where I was crying for a number of days, you know, and just at that moment, it wasn't because I didn't want to have kids or grow a family. It was because I felt like, well, who am I going to become? Like now I can't be myself. And in the moment when I kind of like gave up who I was, right? Like sacrificing myself to kind of like fit into this mold and this idea of what a good wife or a good mom or a good employee would look like, or a good student, you know, those were the moments where I felt most unsatisfied. But also at one point when I was really considering how to live my most joy-filled life, I had to consider how I also was contributing to those feelings, right? Like no one can take your power unless you give it to them, you know? Like, so in that same way, when it comes to joy, you have to receive the joy. The joy is always there. God's just waiting for us to pick it up. But so often we're just like giving away our like time, our energy, our space, our mental well-being to things and people and stuff that doesn't serve us. So the moment we really begin to like put a pause on those things, right? Consider what it is that we actually want. We can then like reclaim our joy and our time and our energy and our space to align ourselves with the vision that we truly desire for ourselves.
What I'm hearing is taking inventory of the things that fill you up, that deplete you, give you energy, rob you of your energy, that you love being around, that you feel a little icky when you leave them or it. You know, the importance of taking your power by knowing that only you can take that inventory and only you know what those things are. I'm curious, Erica, what it is that people aren't getting about joy and why this is so important to bring into our lives.
Ooh, oh my gosh, you guys are coming with some gold questions, okay? Because seriously, that is an amazing question. So often what I hear starting out is one, like joy is impossible for me right now because I have XYZ. So already it's like you've given up, like, and that right there is half the battle, right? Knowing that you can have the joy. Another thing that I commonly hear that people aren't getting about joy is that it's a birthright. Okay. We're all meant to, joy is actually our default when we come into this world. But so often I hear, well, right now, joy is a luxury for me. Joy is a luxury. And it's like, like hearing that just makes me feel so sad. Like joy is one of the most basic things that we have, and it's literally something that we can have at no cost. But so often, based on people's preconceived notions of what joy should be, and most of the time, those ideals of joy aren't based in their own experience or their true desires for themselves, but based on what they feel society would celebrate as like a joyous or momentous occasion or thing worth celebrating, you know? And so right there, they're already putting themselves in a very limiting mindset of like, I can't have that right now because of everything around me. When really joy has nothing to do with how much money you have in your account. Like none. You could like, it almost makes me feel like very sad, because when you go to other parts of the world where, you know, third world countries, and you see people that are really genuinely smiling, like kids that are playing like, and they have like not having like all the toys in the world, you know, or they like barely have running water, but like yet and still they are connected with their community. They have innate joy where they go to bed feeling satisfied, you know, and it's not a constant need to like for like wanting, you know? And I think that that's really one of the biggest things that people miss about joy. It's not about having something in order to get it. It's here. You just gotta receive it. It's like faith, right? It's here. It's all around us. Like there's no, and I think that sometimes it's because people feel like they need to see it in order to believe it, that it can exist for them. Or it's like, oh, that person has joy, that person this. But one, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors with that person's life. Like it may be what they present on the outside, but inside they may have all the money and stuff, but like inside they may be like very unsatisfied, you know, or they may be struggling with self-confidence or whatever the case is. So really just one of the biggest things that I think people miss is the fact that the opportunity for joy is always present. It's really a practice of being present enough to engage with the joy that is at hand.
Yeah. And like to notice it, like to be still enough to notice what those things are, or like the beauty in nature, or even me. Like I just bought my first house and I'm like, it is next to the Mississippi. There's trees everywhere. I'm like, who am I? Like, I'm a nature girly now. It's like, but I finally I appreciate those simple things, and I notice them. I feel like I've also done the work like on my mental health, and I'm continuing to do it. And so I'm curious how these like go hand in hand, right? Like people who maybe struggle with mental health. And so do you feel like it's extra hard for them to find the joy? Like what is that connection between those two pieces?
You know, sometimes I think when it comes to joy, people don't realize that it's not even like the money that they're seeking to get the things. It's the peace they think they can buy with the money, you know? And I think that that's the struggle. Like, in order to rest, I need to have X amount of dollars in my account. In order to be fulfilled or be seen as successful, I need other people to celebrate me versus like me celebrating myself, you know? And like we're all walking miracles, okay? So I think that sometimes the mental health piece really comes in not realizing how capable we are of like truly embracing and embodying that piece where we are and as we are. And Brooke, I love that you shared the fact that you use nature. Like that nature is my like one of my go-tos, okay? Because when you stand outside and you like hear the rustle of the leaves in the trees, or like when you feel the wind, like close your eyes and like feel the wind like sweep across your body, or when you like hear the birds chirping. Or I love spring so much because there are days where I just walk outside and I literally just like take it all in, you know, and it's like the like being so present that you can like sense and like smell the flowers, like actually smell the flowers without being up close to them, you know, all of that brings joy. And God is such an amazing artist that he has given us access to joy in literally everything, like everything. if we just go outside, like our minds should be blown every single day and like what he's done. And like when you really think of even how like nature and the world works in such an order, like when you think of, he's not a God of chaos, right? And just thinking about how he creates like environmental systems and like how those systems not only care for themselves, but they care for us, even though we're destroying them. But you know, like how if we were taken out of the equation, they would still live on. You know what I mean? Like, it's all mind blowing. And there's joy to be understood and found in all of that. So even when we ourselves may be going through a moment where we're having a I don't want to say a mental health crisis, but when we're having a moment where we're not feeling like our mental best, right? Just understanding and trusting that the same God that cares for the world and like keeps it in operation and moving day in and day out, he also cares enough to care for us. So we really just have to lean into trusting him more and also like communing with him more. And through that, he'll give us the answers that we need and as we need them. So we're not overwhelming ourselves with unnecessary information.
Yeah, I love hearing your perspective on that because I'm with you and I'm thinking of people that don't have that faith, right? That maybe could cultivate some gratitude for being alive or their health, but would you say that's the ticket to get to joy is to start with gratitude? Because I feel like a lot of times what you're saying is like interchangeable. It's kind of like I'm grateful that I'm outside and I'm safe and it's beautiful, or I'm grateful for what I'm seeing, but maybe you don't have the faith behind it, or you don't think that a God created this or whatever. So if you were to cultivate joy, I mean, from either perspective, you have faith or you don't, would you say gratitude is kind of the same thing or a route to get to joy?
Yes. I believe that gratitude is a route to get to joy. And I love that scripture from like 1 Thessalonians 5:16, be joyful always. Like that's my, like in all things, because honestly, even when things aren't necessarily working out perfectly in our mind's eye, or as we can see it, we know that everything comes back to glorify God. Like it may be that it may take some time for you to even see it, but sometimes when things aren't working out, it's because he's working something else out. But I love the fact that you asked this because not everybody believes, right? Not everyone has faith. And faith is simply believing, right? Faith is believing. Faith is trusting in something or someone, right? So everyone has faith in something. You have faith in something. You believe in something. Oftentimes when, like, if we're not coming at it from a perspective of like Christianity, you know, and even that sometimes makes me feel a little like, oh, because then I think people think more about the religious aspect than the relationship aspect, which is really what it is. But all right, don't get distracted, Erica. Peeling it back and getting back to this belief thing, right? If you are not leading by faith and believing and trusting in the joy of possibility, or like anchoring yourself in the gratitude and trust of the what if in the positive manner, right? Then you're automatically operating in fear. So you're trusting something, right? You're believing in something, but you're believing in your fears. So rather than being elevated, you're then like putting yourself in a position to be like bound and constricted and feel like you have no way out. You're putting yourself in a box. I always like to say that like you're either operating in faith or fear, and one gives you limitations while the other gives you liberation. So which one are you going to choose? You know, like, so when you really start to think about it that way, everyone believes in something. But when you are operating from a position of like Christ-led faith and like Christianity, I just love the fact that our faith is in something and someone, a God that's bigger than us, but also a God that's given us access to so many beautiful promises that really have us understand that we can create whatever it is that we want, right? I mean, as long as it's in alignment with his will and his way, but also we know that he wants the best for us. So it then becomes a question of us really asking, like, the person, right? The God that created us, you know me better than I know myself. Real talk. He does. Because there's some things that, like, if I look back on my stories, like, I wanted that for myself, and thank goodness it didn't happen, because that would not have been for me, you know? But the moment we really began to operate from that position of trust and faith in the good and the possibility, it takes us further away from the limitations that fear places on us on a day-to-day basis. I hope that answered the question. It was very long-winded. But.
No,
that was beautiful.
I love that. And it comes back to this idea of choice and ownership. And it reminds me of a Tony Robbins quote that says, where attention goes, energy flows. And so it's this idea of there's always going to be bad things in the world, hate, fear, but there's also always going to be things that are beautiful and this promise and having faith. You know, it's what we focus on grows. And we have the choice to focus on the bad or the good. And unfortunately, like our 2 million-year-old brain, if we get into that, it focuses on the bad because it wants to protect us. But going into this idea of it being a practice, and we're conditioning ourselves to look for the good day in and day out, no matter what our circumstances are, whether it's the weather or the nature, or the leaves, like you're saying, Erica. You know, I keep thinking how it's a choice, but it has to be a conditioned choice. And that practice that we're consciously choosing to make that a practice each and every day.
Yes. And I love that you even like mention it from that perspective, because when it comes down to it, it is a choice, but it's also something, the way I think about it, and it just almost makes it a no-brainer for me, is that there's so much like ugh in the world already as it stands. The world is a messy, messy place. Okay. She is messy. And it's like, if we have a choice to put anything else in the world, wouldn't we want it to be good? Like, right. I mean, there's already so much darkness. If we can just show up as that light, like one beam of light can make all the difference if a room is completely dark. And it doesn't need to illuminate the whole room, but even just having that one beam, it like focus in a specific area can help you eventually find what it is that you need to find, or go where it is that you need to go. And along the way, you may find that like you reflect light to another person or another thing. And then there are two of you walking and then like beaming light. And when I really think of this joy work, it's something that starts off as a simple choice, but I believe that as we each begin to operate in that choice of choosing to be joy and choosing to be light and choosing to be life-giving each and every single day, it creates a ripple effect of joy that can really change the world. And it doesn't have to be like this huge to-do. I think so many people think about, well, I want to do this and I want to be great and I just want to have that big idea that's going to like do the stuff. But I was thinking about this in the car as I was driving with my husband the other day. Like, some of the most life-shifting things that have happened in my life have really been in like the quiet moments, or like stillness, or like a simple question that has changed the trajectory of my life, like literally, you know? So I think that when we begin to embrace moments like that and the conversation of joy from that perspective, it can really make all the difference.
That's beautiful. I feel like everything you're saying is just speaking right to my soul. And you are a stay-at-home mom, and I'm thinking back to when I was and how it was really hard for me to find joy in that time. Might have been some postpartum issues in there. But I'm curious for people that are kind of in a stage of life that is tough, right? Like they got newborns and they're not getting a lot of sleep, and it's just like tough to find the joy. Or like you're in a job and you're not really enjoying it, and you're kind of like, you know, you're going to get out of it, but you're kind of stuck in this stage that's tough.
Or you're sick and physically not feeling good.
Yes. How do you start the process of cultivating joy in those phases of life?
I love this. So I have a tagline for the Journey to Purpose, and it's one feel good thing at a time. And that's literally what it is. Like, take things one feel-good thing at a time. It doesn't have to be all the things. It doesn't have to be all the things right now. But if you take it moment by moment, you'll find that you're able to then curate the joy and build on it. I think oftentimes, like when people have this idea of what they want things to be, it's like, I want it all and I want it all right now. Even me, right? In my entrepreneurial journey, starting out, this business is a culmination of things and skills that I've acquired over the past 20 years. But when I started this business, I started it like right at the beginning of the pandemic, like this iteration of the business. And I didn't know where it was going. And then at one point when I got very clear on like, ooh, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it. And I was going so hard and like pounding like the pavement and doing this and doing that, doing all the things, burning myself out, overwhelming myself, and then like creating just like not joy at home and in my business and stressing myself. But then at one point, I really had to get clear about the fact that, Erica, the things will come when they're meant to come. And also, there is joy to be had in the process. Like at some point, you will look back on these times with joy, like thinking about knowing you are where you want to be, but also thinking about how you arrive there. And if it's something where you're literally like stressing the entire time and you're like angsty about everything, then that's not the recollection that you'll have when the time comes. And you want to enjoy the process. And then also knowing that at that time, being a stay-at-home mom, I wanted to enjoy my kids while they're little, So really getting clear about how you want to feel in any given moment. And if it's something where you notice that you're not feeling your best, think of like, well, what is one thing that I could do to make myself feel better right now? And implement that thing and see what happens and how it transforms how you feel in that moment and then how you could potentially build on it.
I love that. It's the same idea of, as coaches, we talk about small steps and having something that is reachable that is going to lead you to then the next step, and you build that momentum. It's one step at a time, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you even phrase it that way, because through the process of the one step at a time, you may find that where it is that you wanted to go or what it is that you thought you wanted isn't even it. Like, but you're enjoying the process and you're enjoying the discovery that comes along with the process. And when you're enjoying it and you're able to like look at it from a relaxed perspective, then you're actually able to get further faster, because then you're not doing all the backtracking of having gone so fast that you didn't even know where you were going or what you were doing, and it's totally misaligned. And then you have to like restructure and reorganize, so you're actually able to go at a planned pace that works for you and your life. And you feel good along the way, which is ultimately what you want, because that's what you'll actually remember. Right. And the people around you too, right? Talk about family. Like, I didn't want my kids looking back and being like, mommy was horrible. Oh my gosh, when she was starting her business. No, like I want them to think of the fun times, like, and how we did this together.
Yeah, let's talk about you as a mom for a minute, because I imagine you like listen to your podcast, you're singing, you can just riff off Bible verses. I feel like it's just this energy that you have, and it's just like who you are, like you're a ray of sunshine. But I'm curious what that's like on days when it's hard as a mom. What is that like for you? Like, what kind of mom are you on the day that you're not totally spark full of joy?
Ooh, this is juicy. You want all the secrets. The days when I'm not my most joy-filled. So I let myself feel the feelings. Especially if I'm feeling them hard. Like I take that moment, I reflect on it, I journal on it, I pray on it. I have a little process for that even. I don't go to other people with it, at least not immediately, because I think that's when you get other people in your ear, and it's like they don't even know the full extent of what it is. And also sometimes in considering what you're even telling them, like, when you have a feeling and the first thing is like, let me go ask somebody what they think, or let me see, but then you have trouble even articulating what the thing is. Like, stop it. Don't do that. Like, first you have to understand for yourself what it actually is. And then from there, I find that a lot of times, then I have enough clarity to pray about it. Like, Lord, I really feel this way about this, and it's irking me, and I don't know why it's irking me. Or, Lord, give me the patience today. Or, Lord, give me the peace. Or, I don't know. Like, he does what he does. Like, the Holy Spirit does what he does, and he ministers to me in those ways. And what's also awesome about it is that once you really begin to cultivate that relationship with Christ, right, he begins to speak to you in the ways that are needed specifically for you. Like that intimate relationship where it's like he knows you so well, where there have been times where I've prayed for something and I'm like, Lord, I'm just frustrated. Like, I need to understand this thing. And I'll be like, and Lord, I'd like to know today, like, like, let me know. And he will literally, like, he speaks to me and I know it's him. I know it's him because it'll be like, I'll ask him a question and I'll literally look down and the answer will be in front of me in a Bible verse. Like the next thing, like literally the next thing. I would have thought it, he would have answered me right then. And this has happened to me on multiple occasions. Or like, I'll be thinking something and like, I'll have an idea come and I'll be like, oh, Lord, is that what you're trying to tell me? But I'm not sure. And then I'll leave it alone and I'll be like, but tell me 3 times, Lord, so I know that it's real. And like, I'm telling you, I say it all the time. 3 is my favorite number. I have a thing with the number 3. And so if the Lord confirms something 3 times for me, it's a go. And he'll like send people unsolicited. Like, I wouldn't have asked them these things, but these people will come to me and be like, I was thinking about you the other day and this, and this came, and it'll literally be like a word from God. Like, you don't even know what you just did. It's part of what the adventure and the joy of the journey is. So like understanding that even in motherhood, I think what happens a lot of times when the joy of motherhood is stripped from us, it's because we're trying to compartmentalize ourselves. Like, we're trying to make ourselves like what seems to be nice rather than like being actual people, like this idea of perfectionism as a mom. Like, I am a perfect mom. Like, my kids are amazing. And like, I am a messy mom. Like, I tell my kids sometimes, like, not our house. Like, I have a thing about that. Like, I try to keep things organized, but like, we have messy moments, because life is messy. And I don't shy away from those moments because that is the human experience. Like, even when we think about life and like sin or whatever the case is, like, it happens. But we have access to like an eternal cleansing. We have access to freedom. We have access to forgiveness. We have access to like the ability to repent and like really have it be like nothing ever happened at all. Not to say we should take advantage of it to the point where we're abusing it, but like understanding that we get to make mistakes. And it's part of those mistakes, it's part of that like process that makes us human, but also makes it where we understand the need to rely on someone and something, right? God, bigger than ourselves. But bringing it back to the question about motherhood, I keep it real with my kids. I keep it honest. I don't want to come off as perfect mommy. I am a flawed human being. The sooner you begin to understand that, the sooner, you understand that motherhood and adulthood like comes with its stuff. I think that kids have this idea. My daughter said to me the other day, or no, said to Jace, my son. She was like, yeah, I can't wait to be an adult because adults get to do whatever they want all the time. And I was like, that's not true. Girl, do you think that me having to take you to school in the middle of the day is what I want to be doing? Like, just, and I think that is great to have these conversations, even starting with them at a young age, because it gives them an understanding of what the world is like and what life is like, but also giving them an understanding of the power that they have and how they choose to engage with the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what makes them like conscious human beings. I think that's what makes them forward-thinking human beings. I think that's what really empowers them to think for themselves versus succumbing to the thoughts and the ideas and the ideals and the stuffery of everyone else. So they can really make intentional choices and decisions about how they want to do anything and everything. So On my worst days, I'm a person. I pray, I converse, I talk it out with myself, I talk it out with God, I talk it out with my kids and the people around me. And I've cried in front of my kids, like, and they ask me why I'm crying, and if I can explain to them, like, I'll explain it to them. You know, if it's a matter of feelings, I share my feelings because we have them for a reason, and you know, we're meant to like express them and understand what they mean for us so that we aren't necessarily like bound by the not so great feelings, because it's actually through those feelings and like getting through them that we're able to arrive at joy. But the more we try to suppress them, that just keeps the joy further off.
Oh, I love that, which leads me into my next question, which is, do you feel like, so, you know, they say emotions, you're not always happy, you're not always sad. Is that the same thing with joy? Like, you're not always joyful? Or is joy a separate entity, if that makes sense?
If joy is the goal, you are always joyful. I think it's just sometimes a matter of bringing it to the surface. Like how I am now, even in my not great moments, I still consider myself to be a joyful person because I know that that moment is only momentary. Like I had something happen last year and I felt like I failed, man. I felt like I failed so hard. And like, I was just like, Lord, what is this? I trusted you, you know, I was rooting for you. Just kidding. And I was really upset and I was like trying to wear a face about it. And like, I remember driving my husband somewhere and I'm driving and I pull up to a spot and I'm like smiling. And he's like looking at me. He's like, so, and I'm like, so, and he's like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And then like all of a sudden I just cry. I just start crying. I'm like sobbing. And like internally it's because I felt like I'd failed at something. And in that moment, even while I wasn't like the most joy-filled person, I still like trusted enough in what God was doing in that moment to like speak with him about it, right? And ask him what it meant. Because even in our not happiest times, like there's purpose in everything. So like I remember having a conversation with him and being like, but Lord, you told me to do this and I trusted you. And so I did it. And like it's not working. And you know, like me having that like spiritual conversation. And I kid you not, ladies, he was like, yeah, I told you to do that, but I didn't tell you to do it like that. And I was like, wait, what? A Holy Spirit read happens all the time. I appreciate them. You know, God is awesome. But like through that, it helped me understand how I was being self-sufficient in a way that would not help me in the long term. It wouldn't have been good if the thing had worked out. Like it wouldn't have glorified God in the way that like what I'm doing now is. It wouldn't have helped me in that it wouldn't have been sustainable. And it also would have put me in a mindset of thinking that I have to do so much more, like work so much harder in order to do God's work, when really like that's not what we're called to do. We get to just show up. Like when we are operating in God's plan and purpose for our lives, like it really is just a matter of us being who he has called us to be and like emptying ourselves out so that we can be a vessel, and we get to rest in that process. And that's the message that I got from that upset where I wasn't most joyful, you know, like, Lord, okay, I thought I had the answers and we'll never have all the answers, right? So like, let's just get that out of the way. But like, what is it that you would have me do? And how would you have me do it? And through that, when I tell you, like the past 8 months, I've been realizing like, oh, I get to chill. Like life is really for chilling, you know? Like life is good. And it just amplifies the joy because then we're really not doing extra. We're just living. And that's how God intended for it to be. Like when you think of the scriptures that talk about the type of faith we're supposed to have childlike faith. When you think about children, what are they doing? Asking us questions, living their life, laughing, playing, coloring, having fun. We get to do that as adults. And even like when you think of kids being upset, when they're upset, they're only upset but for a moment. Because then they're on to the next joy-filled thing because they realize that that's not the end all be all, you know?
My mind's going to like where Brooke and I are right now with all of our moving parts of our business and how it's like, we want to have fun, but there's things that we have to do. And so would you say that's just like a mindset thing? Like that I'm just telling myself that we have these 16,000 things we have to do and you're saying do less? Is that what you're telling me right now?
Oh, yes. Always do less. Because doing the most is not fun. But also, I think that it really allows us to focus on what's most important versus like all the things. Because the truth of the matter is, as an entrepreneur, especially if you are still like in the small solopreneur, small business phase, which I mean, like that could go on forever, right? There are always going to be so many things that need your attention, but you're only one person and you only have but so much time. So focusing on what's needed most in this particular season or this particular moment, being focused on that will help you create better results that you're actually more satisfied with versus focusing on all the things and kind of like half doing them and then not even one being fully satisfied with the outcome and two not feeling great after it's done because then that just contributes to more dissatisfaction. So I like to think about like how you actually feel as you're doing the thing in addition to how you feel once the thing is done. And when you do less, most of the time you feel better in both parts of those things.
Yeah, it's like enjoying all the pieces instead of just doing it to get it off the to-do list.
Yeah, because then also you may find that once that's done, and because again, like entrepreneurship is for, it's like, it's not a sprint, right? Like they always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But like really and truly, if you have your own business, you're in this for the long haul. So like you don't want to burn yourself out trying to do everything at once and then not even enjoying it. And then feeling like once you've done the things, it's like, all right, on to the next thing, because there will always be a next thing. And on top of that, like if you're constantly doing all the things, when are you actually taking time to assess what you've done, how it's working, and how it's actually like preparing you for whatever is actually next? You know what I mean? So you have to pause and you have to enjoy the process. And also knowing that like tomorrow isn't guaranteed, right? So I always like to think of how do I want to feel like in looking back on life, how you want to feel throughout the process of building whatever it is that you're building, whether it's a business, whether it's working for someone else, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, right? Whatever it is, like how do you want to feel and how do you want your family to feel and how do you want to make other people around you feel in general, because ultimately that's what they'll remember. Like all the little things that you've done, all the stuff on your checklist, like it's helpful to have those things. But if it's coming at the expense of your joy and your well-being and your relationships, then is it really worth it? You know?
Oh man, Erica.
There's your answer.
I love it. Well, something too that you talk about so many things. I have 64 thoughts going through my mind right now. But one of them is you on your website talk about charging your joy. So now I'm thinking like I kind of know some things that bring me joy. I want them in my life, but how do you charge it up? Like what are your strategies for that?
Ooh, this is a really juicy question and it's really good because I would say that it depends on the person. So that's something that typically comes up in conversation when I'm working with individuals one-on-one, because I could say a lot of things, but it could be that all of the things that I'm speaking about don't necessarily speak to anyone that's listening. But the best way to know is to take the Joy Gem Superpower Quiz. Because this particular quiz is a resource that I've created to help individuals understand not only how they can begin to maximize their joy in this particular season, but how they could leverage that joy to start creating more time, energy, and space for themselves starting right now. So based on the results that each individual will get in their specific joy gem type, there are very specific suggestions that are made for how that individual can begin to charge their joy one feel-good thing at a time.
It's an awesome quiz, and you can take it for free on your website. And so will you tell them what your website is so they can go there and take the quiz?
Yeah, for sure. My website is ericalasan.com. And if you're looking to take the quiz, you can take it at ericalasan.com/quiz.
Yes, yeah. Brooke and I took it, and it was super fun. And something too that Erica brought to our attention is that, through life and these different chapters, you can go back and take the quiz again, and you might get a completely different result. And I just think that's really important. And something that keeps speaking to me is this word clarity, that, you're getting clarity on what brings you joy. You're getting clarity on, where you're at in your life and what you want out of it. And I think that just speaking with you and slowing down to get clarity, I just feel like this word is just speaking to me on, if you don't have the clarity, what are you doing? Because you're just creating more chaos instead of what you actually want and more joy. And so everything you've said, this word is just like speaking to me.
Oh, praise God. Wait, now I want to talk about your experience taking the quiz.
Yes.
Types?
Mine was connection, which totally made sense. And it was, the self-sacrificing and being in demand for helping others, and instead of resting when I need to, just pushing forward more, which I can totally relate to. And it was finding joy in people and relationships, making time for that. Something I've heard before that has stuck with me is make the most important thing the thing. It kind of what you were saying with focus. Mm-hmm. And it's like, stop complicating, getting your ego involved and making it more complex than it is. So I loved the quiz because it also gave like those small steps of here's what to do to fill your specific joy.
I got experiential wisdom. And so mine hit on the head. It's like, you're confident in who you are. You know what you want. You're excited about it. You just want a to-do list and you're ready. Which is so perfect for my life, because I feel like I've figured out what brings me joy. I've gotten clear on my purpose, but now I feel like I'm complicating it with so many directions that it can go. Because with social media and the platforms that we have, we're on everything, and it can go so many different directions. And one takes off, and I didn't expect TikTok to take off. And it's like, how do we do that? Do I want to do that? And so I think I'm just complicating my purpose and my joy by not getting clear on, what is it that sparks the most? Like you were saying, you can get too busy with all of the things.
Yeah. And it makes sense now that the word clarity keeps popping up for you in terms of like, with clarity, what is it that I desire moving forward? That's awesome. I'm like, well, what does clarity look like? But I'm not going to go into a full-on coaching. I can literally do this all day. This is so much fun for me.
Yes, because people can take the quiz, but they can also work with you one-on-one, so that they can find that on your website as well.
Yeah, for sure. They can work with me one-on-one. I also offer group coaching. It's a small container of only 8 people, and we're starting a new cohort at the end of this month. So there is some space if anyone is interested in potentially joining. They could totally book a Joy Jolt session, and we could discuss which options are right for them. And then I also have a couple of courses that I do throughout the year. I have the Dream Academy, which is really what kicked off this entire journey to purpose in this business. And that's a 6-week vision boarding course that I started that really walks you through the process of understanding, 1, what brings you joy, 2, how that joy coincides and is related to your purpose. So we sift through all the joy gems and all the things that bring you joy, and helping you understand how it can propel your purpose in your career, in your life, in your business. And then we put it all on a board, make it pretty, but then we give you tangible strategies and action steps to make the vision a reality. So that comes up a couple times a year. So the best thing anyone can do if they're interested is visit the site, get your Joy Gem quiz going, and then you'll be added to the mailing list, and you can hear of all of the other things as they come up throughout the year.
Yes. Well, and you also have a beautiful presence on YouTube and Instagram too. And Instagram is Erica Lasan, just your name, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I will plug all of this in the show notes so that everybody has access to you, because I just sat and watched reels of you. I lost track of time. Just lost complete track of time. You just have so many beautiful messages you're putting to the world. We just want to thank you for what you're doing. And like, if we need anything, we need more joy in the world. And the way that you speak of it in so many different ways so that anybody can understand and take a message home on how to create more joy. And so we just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And we also want to hear more from you. So now it's time for your 3 gold stars.
So the first gold star is to get still, slow down. Don't move too fast, so that you can get clear on what it is that you actually want and where it is that you want to be going. The second gold star is to, once you are still and quiet, really focus on what brings you joy and not being so spread out about it, but really honing in on one feel-good thing at a time. So if there's something that you think is like the thing that lights you up and gets you excited, see where that can lead as it pertains to your journey. And then the third gold star is to really then share the joy and the vision that you have. Because with that, you're able to activate accountability. You're able to have other people who are aware of the goals and the dreams and the vision and what brings you joy so that they can hold you to it, but then so they can also cheer you on along the way. And with that, you never know how you could actually be inspiring them and starting a journey of your own. So then it becomes a win-win-win. And I'm all about the win-win-wins.
Yes, that collective healing, which is exactly what you're doing by lighting us up over here. And now we can go share that with our audience. And well, again, we're so grateful. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Oh, thank God. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I loved it.
Unleashing Ivy.
Okay.
So these are our 3 rapid fire questions that you wanted to be a surprise. Are you ready?
Now I'm nervous.
Okay, Erica, my question is, what is one thing that used to bring you joy in a previous season of your life that no longer does?
Oh, hanging out in New York City. Like, just going to events for the sake of going to events, like being on the scene. Oh, yeah, that's not for me anymore. I thought that I would be a city girl for life, but I now find myself wanting to roam the woods and like walk around without shoes. And I thought at one point I'd want a big, huge house. And now I'm like, I really want a tiny home. And I just want to hang out with the trees and be in nature all the time. So yeah, being in the city. I love New York for a period. It served its purpose, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's kind of like me. Like I thought I would move to New York and do fashion, and then my body had different plans of health becoming my world. And now, like you, we're both nature girlies over here, except camping. That's where I draw the line. I will do nature walks, but I will not camp.
Bruh, don't say that. You have to try glamping.
Okay, that I can get behind. Absolutely.
We'll do a glamping trip with you. You can show us how to do it. That'd be so much fun.
Yes, it's a date.
Okay, so my question, I don't think you're going to be able to answer that quickly because it's kind of complex. But I've listened to your podcasts and watched a million reels, and I'm super curious about your faith in God and the law of attraction and manifestation. This like idea of God's plan versus you're creating your future, you're creating your own plan, and like how that works together.
Ooh, that is good. Because, I love this. You really going in. Okay, so I do believe that God, He's created all things. So like when people talk about the law of attraction and manifestation, like I think that does fall under God's umbrella, but it falls under God's umbrella, not ours, right? Like there is an ability, I like in thinking about the law of attraction, I feel like there's so much behind the things that we don't know. So the law of attraction, it's working in some way, right? But even with that, God created all of the laws. Like he created how things work. So I do think that there's some truth there. But it's funny that you mentioned manifestation, because I used to talk about manifestation a lot, like manifest your dreams, manifest the life you want. And I remember my pastor's wife in one of the recent services talking about manifestation. And she was talking about what the word manifest actually means, which means to reveal. And then also knowing that the word manifestation is in the Bible, but it's not used in reference to humans manifesting anything. God manifests because only he can reveal, right? So I've even in like my use of the word, I feel like I've dialed it back, because ultimately, like, I even feel weird when people compliment me on things and I say thank you. Like, I can't take credit for anything. Like, ultimately, God does all things. So I say praise God, because at the end of the day, he's good and he gets all the glory. So I do believe they all exist, but I feel like it's all God's doing. And we're really just here to be used by him in that way. So like we can create our future, right? In that he can give us an idea, he can give us a vision, but ultimately it is him that's allowing us to operate within that vision. Like, I don't think that, like, even when people talk about the business, right? Like I say, God graciously like allowed me to co-found this business. Like I'm a co-CEO with the Holy Spirit, you know? And I think that the ability to even think about it from that perspective really then allows us the opportunity to relax and rest in his presence, because then it gives us freedom to realize we don't have to have all the answers. We don't, like, and that gives us freedom to enjoy the journey, right? And trusting that God will give us what we need when we need it and as we need it, versus thinking that we ourselves in being self-sufficient, or thinking we need to be self-sufficient, have to be able to manifest everything on our own. That's exhausting. And if that's what we got to do, I don't want it. Like, I don't want it, you know? So I don't know if that answers the question. Does that answer the question?
Yes. I'm curious about like the vision board too. Like this is kind of what I'm thinking of. Like thinking of that as like law of attraction, right? Like you're creating this vision, right? And you are trying to figure out how to get there in this process. But how does that work when you're like surrendering to God's plan? Does that make sense?
Ooh, you are going in. I have a process. I do have a process. But even, okay, so to the question of law of attraction, now I understand. Even with that process, I've given it to God. Like before I even start my vision board process, I pray. So it's like, it's crazy, because it's like, this is what makes it so much fun, in that you can think that you want one thing, but when you are like aligned and in line, he will like stir your heart and your spirit to put things. Can I show you guys my vision board?
Yes, please.
So this is my vision board. And it's actually the one from last year. I haven't updated it yet because God's still working on it. But there are so many things on. So first of all, it's like 5 feet or something. Like it's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Everyone go look at YouTube right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a massive vision. But like, that's the God we serve, right? He's not like a small God. When he gives you a task or he wants you to do something, like he has in store for us immeasurably more than we could begin to ask or imagine. When we begin to like, okay, Aria wants to show you her vision.
Oh, Aria, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow.
You want to open it up and then you got to go sit down.
Ooh.
What's in there? Do I see a castle? And a rainbow?
Yes.
I love it. Good job. Wow. You are creating your own vision board. That is so cool. Where do you keep it?
In a drawer.
In a drawer.
In a drawer. Yep. Keeps it in the drawer. You tell them to put it where they can see it. Yeah. So I keep mine where I see it every single day. But he has promised us immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine. So like the things that God has in mind for us, if we were to really believe him for it, like we wouldn't even begin to be able to put the vision down because we can't conceive it for ourselves. And even now, like if you were to ask me about what I'm doing now, like 5 years ago, if you would have told me I was doing this, even 2 years ago, if you would have told me I would be doing this, I wouldn't have believed you because I couldn't have seen it for myself. And there's so many things that God has given me in this vision that I did not see for myself. Like, and this is my play section, like all of this, like even being on a podcast, speaking with you ladies, I don't think I would have seen that for myself. And it's amazing.
But it says storyteller right there.
Yeah.
There you go. And here you are.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I didn't know that. The microphone, like, what is this? And I promise you, ladies, so many of these things that are put on here, like, it was something where I prayed beforehand. And, like, I have a process that's a part of my process. I have a whole course around it. So it's extensive, so I wouldn't even begin to touch it now because I feel like in explaining it, because I wouldn't want to overwhelm the conversation. But in the process, it's something where it's really like, what do you think would be like crazy for you to even begin to think of for yourself? And I kid you not, like all of these things are happening. Like they're happening. And then like even this one, like empowering entrepreneurs. I wasn't thinking about that when I started this business, but now that is literally a part of my target audience, you know, creative entrepreneurial moms who are busy and looking to create more time, energy, and space for themselves. Being a change agent. Oh my gosh. Like this. Become a change agent was something that I put on here. And I put on here cover contest because I wanted to be on the cover of a magazine. And at that time I was like where? How, when, like, what is, like, okay, Erica, you being real bold right now, but okay. And last fall, ladies, I was on the cover of my alma mater's school magazine. And it went, it's a global institution. So it went all around the world. And the part that got me about it, I was like, oh God, won't you do it? Was the theme and the story was change makers. In pursuit of change makers, become a change agent. You know, like it's just, I like really and truly when we look at the Bible and what it tells us to do, like the word has all the answers. It's a roadmap to joy, success, fulfillment, and peace along the way. And when it tells us to really speak forth, like the life that we desire for ourselves. And when it tells us that we have the authority to speak like the life that we want, especially when we're doing it like for God's glory, like it's not a lie. It's not a lie. Like he's given us the ability to do those things. And also like when we speak the things and then we also then begin to talk to God about how he would like us to do the things, he gives us the steps. So that's why it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Like, it's really a matter of believing that it's possible enough for you to do it and then trusting that God will carry you the rest of the way. Because that's really all he wants. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to have that childlike faith and being like, Lord, I don't get it, but you know what? I'm going to trust you. And it's through that process that we arrive to wherever it is that we want to go with more joy, with more peace, but ultimately it comes back to glorify him because it can never be said that we did the things ourselves because we didn't even know how. Like when we put the visions down, we didn't know how, but he gave us the instructions that we needed. So it's like, it creates a wonderful relationship. I love it.
I love that you wrapped it up saying that because how I view it is I'm having these thoughts, these downloads for a reason. Like I want these things in my future for a reason, and to be still to hear these things of what I want is someone is instilling these wants and desires in me. I kind of view it that way because these are the things in return that are bringing me the purpose and the joy and the service of others, filling my cup up first, kind of thinking about these wants and desires like I have them for a reason. They're being imprinted on me for a reason. It's kind of my view on it, or what my view is becoming, I should say.
Yeah, I love that. It's powerful.
Yeah. He does give vision, like in the same way he did it back then with like David and like Joseph. Like he's still doing it. Like he's the same. He's literally the same God. He doesn't change. Like, and it's really cool once you really begin to allow it. Because I think that that's another thing. Like, for so long, I think that aspects of this have always been present my entire life. But it's like the moment I really was like, I'm just going to do this because it's so much more tiring trying to do it any other way. And I'm just tired, you know? And so when I allowed him, he really began to like it, ladies, like, I can't even begin to tell you all the things. Like there was a point where I was seeing numbers like all the time. Yeah, he was like speaking to me through numbers, and like I'm still kind of like asking for what they mean, but it was like something where it was like a signal, like it was a sign, something he wanted me, where he wanted me to pay attention to something. So then I'd be like, what you want me to look for, Lord? You know, like it was one of those things. And it's like you can, when you really like commit to the faith walk, you can feel like you're going crazy. Right. But you know, you're not, because the results and what's actually coming to happen and like what's coming to fruition. So like at one point there was that. At one point I was like really praying for the gift of tongues. And like the way that even came about was like mind blowing. I was like singing in a different language. I had a vision of a lady by the well. A couple days later, there was a women's retreat with my church. And there, that scripture from John 4 came up like multiple times during that 3-day retreat. And I was like, God, what are you trying to say? And like, it's wild. So like, it's like when you actually commit to receiving the joy of the process and allowing him to work in you and through you, it's like you can get to where you desire to go so much faster, and you can go like with more peace and like in better tact, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Last question. Okay. I want to be mindful of your time. So last question here is, what is one thing you wish you would have known sooner?
I almost want to say, the one thing I wish I would have known sooner was to trust myself, but it's not even like trust myself. It's like trust God enough to know that like the things you like carry in your heart are worth pursuing, and that you can do it. But it's not even that you have to do it. Like you get to go along for the ride, you know? I think that that's probably what it would be. Because for a very long time, I don't want to say there was so much wasted time just thinking like, is this valuable enough? Like, is this viable enough? Is this feasible enough? Like, I don't have the time. I don't have the money to do this. Like, you know, all of the considerations versus just like doing the thing. But then once I did the thing, and thankfully, like, honestly, thank God I chose this path. Like, in my 20s, rather than like waiting for later, because there's so much that's been learned through the process that can now be used to help others. But even with like that those 9 months that I was crying every day, imagine if I would have just like stopped crying and like just did the thing, you know, pursuing joy. So I think just the idea of understanding that your joy is worth pursuing, and that you get to do it one feel good thing at a time, is something that I wish I would have known sooner.
Love that. Erica, we just want to thank you one more time for being here. You are such a gift, and it's been wonderful. And I don't want the conversation to be over, but we always wrap up every episode with a piece of gold. Would you like to share yours?
Yes. So my piece of gold comes from Hebrews 11. Shout out to the big GOD. And it's really a conversation about faith, because I feel like what we've been talking about this whole time. And it's that faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. So it's really a matter of, you know, understanding that you don't need to see it to believe it. But if you feel it and you trust it, then it's worth pursuing. At least that's how I experience it.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.